So you have never heard me use the phrase defund the police. Never. I think it's a poor phrase. I think the premise of what it is, Republicans do it every day. They call it reallocation. Okay? They reallocate money from education, healthcare, and everything else all the time. I think that, and I've learned this over time, this is like me being fully transparent. There were things that I said when I first became an advocate, or in a way that I said them that I would not say them today. Not because I wasn't right, not because it wasn't the truth, but because I want to be more effective in carrying my message. I think that's the issue with defund the police as a statement. I think that it allows people to weaponize a very valid argument, right? That we spend exorbitant amounts of money on policing. The city of Baton Rouge spends more money on policing and insurance benefits for former employees than we do on anything else, right? Out of a nearly $1 billion a year budget that you and I pay the taxes for the city of Baton Rouge to operate with, and we spend hundreds of millions of dollars on policing. We also have the same in the sheriff's department, and our community is not safer, right? For me, the question is, the real problem is the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over and expect different results. You may decrease the frequency of crime by more policing, but you're not going to decrease the overall crime that you have. And we've seen that happen in ebbs and flows. The other part of that is when you have a culture that does not create accountability in policing, there's a mistrust for policing, and the relationship that is required to be effective, where we are able to communicate with law enforcement able to communicate with us, is tarnished, right? And until that relationship is repaired in some way by mechanisms of accountability existing, I don't think people just want to throw a bunch of money at cops, right? I never hear young people telling me, give more money to police, all right? I hear older people who may not have a deep understanding of the way that the government has funded the police departments capping for that more than anybody else, right? It just is not working. And here's the other thing. The safest cities in America do not have as many police as the most dangerous cities in America. You know what they do have? Strong economies. It's that simple. When you fix the economy in communities and you create equity, you will decrease crime. You don't call cops until crime happens also, right? If we're gonna prevent crime, we could have 1,000 cops and they could be on every corner in every hood. That is not gonna stop crime. What people that are criminals do is they move to another area to commit crime, right? Remember a few years ago, all the crime was in North Baton Rouge, right? Then we start talking about North Baton Rouge, trying to make things happen in North Baton Rouge. They move police units in a different way. Now they're killing each other by the mile. Right? How many homicides we had on Old Hammond Highway? Right? Because crime cannot be contained into a geographic area because you police yourself into that. Criminals are smarter than that. The question is, what are the conditions that create the environments of crime? The pandemic showed us that when you starve communities, when people are uneducated, when the economy bottoms out, what happens? Chaos. And what we see is the result of decades of inadequacy and inequity resulting in our communities. That does not say that that is an excuse for the crime, but we have to be realistic about where we are. How do we fix it? That is a long-term plan. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that in the first 100 days or the first 6 months of me becoming a U.S. Senator that New Orleans and Baton Rouge are going to become extremely safer. I would be lying to you if I told you that. What I can tell you is that I'm going to be focused on creating jobs and opportunities, that I'm going to be focused on how do we get more resources for community centers, for after-school programs so that our young people can be occupied. What I am going to focus on is how do we take the community organizations that are doing the work to do violence intervention and make sure that they have all of the resources necessary to do that work. But more importantly, some of us need to start having conversations in the community also, right? Politicians can't fix all of this. We listen to music every day that's feeding the stereotypes that poison our community. And it's cool when we bouncing around in the club, but then when I was about to cuss, when our people get killed, right, then we all got t-shirts on talking about RIP and free this one, right? It's a conflict between the two. Is it free them or RIP that? And is it cool because it's your cousin this time or is their cousin the next time? Those are conversations that we as a community must also have, and we don't have that conversation enough in group settings where we can actually do the work, right? And we always talking to the choir. right? If we talking about crime with a bunch of people who don't commit crime, I mean, how you gonna stop it, right? We have to have people who are willing to go and have those conversations. I'm gonna be honest with you. I can't talk to every street person. That ain't my gift, all right? But there are people who have that level of understanding and that relationship and too, that credibility, right? You have to have a certain level of credibility to have certain conversations with people. And I think that one of my jobs as a senator is to invite and convene those conversations as well. Now, those conversations may not always be public conversations. There are things that my team will tell you that I've been involved with having conversations with people to try to mediate violence that happens in our community. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't work. But I think that the long-term thing is how do we make the investments necessary to address the problems long-term, because anybody watch Katrina Babies, the documentary Katrina Babies? I would encourage everybody in this room to watch this documentary, all right? A brother from New Orleans made this documentary. And for me, what I took away from the documentary is the people that we see committing the crime in New Orleans today were Katrina babies. And if you look at what we did as a society to neglect those young people, it is no surprise to me that New Orleans is the murder capital of the country right now. Because those people were 4, 5, 8, 10 years old. We upheavaled their whole world, brought them back into decay, and never asked them how they felt. Never sent a therapist, a social worker, a counselor, or none of that. And then we said, let's just put you back in the world and make your world totally different. And then you live in it. And then all these migrated people come into your community that are not a part of your community, change what that looks like, and then you come into that environment, right? I'm not justifying it, but we have to be realistic about how we got here. And so I would encourage everybody to go watch that documentary, because if you watch the documentary, it takes you into the mental and emotional state of the people that are in these communities. And if we don't deal with those issues, we never gonna fix crime.